Pickleball is booming, but are you playing smart and staying injury free? Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned player, the right coaching can make all the difference. Today, I'm joined by PPR Pro Pickleball Coach Kelly Shumway of Teach Me to Pickle. We'll cover key injury prevention strategies, the best warm up and cool down routines, and how coaching helps you avoid setbacks and recover smarter. Don't let bad habits sideline you. Stay in the game and play stronger. Let's dive in. Kelly, welcome and thank you so much for making the time to do this. The viewers and listeners are going crazy about pickleball. You know that it's the fastest growing sport. I'd
I
like you
do.
to introduce yourself. Tell them why it's so important to use coaching as part of the learning process and the advancing your skills process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's a
Our
joy to be here.
pleasure.
Sharing this sport is just kind of turned into an accidental passion of mine. When I moved to Arizona full time about 5 years ago, it was right when the pandemic hit. And so I moved out here and I really did real estate like my whole career. And I moved from Kansas City. And when I came here, I didn't have work to keep me busy right away anyway. And then I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anyone. And then, of course, COVID hit. And so I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to meet people? And so I had a lady on Facebook of all places. And we laugh today because she's turned into like a second mama for me. And she says she picked me up on Facebook. And she found out that I was new and invited me to play pickleball with her and her friends. And probably average age group was probably about mid 70s. And I thought, you know what? These women are out there having a good time and they taught me the game. And so, because of COVID, it was one of the few things still stayed open. So, as the pandemic got worse, things started shutting down, with the exception of those little pickleball courts. And so, we went from 1 day a week to 2 days a week. Next thing you know, I'm on a court about 6 days a week for several hours a day. And I just accidentally got good. And so that turned into people wanting to learn from me. And then I went through and got my coaching credentials. And then slowly those coaching credentials ended up tearing up. And then I became a PPR pro coach. And with that, it's been interesting because I've been on the side of the spectrum. I was learning as a beginner. And as I became a coach, I was able to use my own experience and be like, man, I really wish I would have taken some coaching lessons early on to really have learned correctly and not to have picked up some bad habits that I had to end up correcting. And then even a lot of things on a safety standpoint, I wish there were some things that I learned early on. And thus, here we are.
Here we are.
Mhm.
Kelly, can you let people know the distinction of what it means to be a PPR pro coach and what that entails if you're looking to find a coach like you?
Sure, absolutely. So within the sport, as you said, it is the fastest growing sport in the US. That being said, there are a lot of people that have incredibly attracted to this sport. And the PPR circuit is one of the accreditations of the teaching of pickleball. And just because you're a good player does not mean that you also have the ability to be a good teacher. And so there is kind of a training program on that, and it is overlooked where, as a coach, you are also judged not only on how well you play, because you do have to be a PPR pro coach, you have to play at a 4.5 level or higher. You also have to show you are watched in the forum where you are judged on how well you can teach a class as well. And then, of course, the content and the written side of it. So it's kind of like a three-tiered system. But the PPR is probably the most widely recognized teaching platform. So when you go to learn, yes, your friend may be able to teach you. And by the way, that may be good enough. But if you fall in love with the game, which I will tell you, most people do. We call it, yep, you're one of them. It is probably the most healthiest drug on the planet. And I would like to touch on that because there are some things that pickleball can cure. So we'll hopefully dive into that a little bit later. But you can just learn so much quicker by having a coach, hopefully also keep you injury free. And it's also a good way to build your pickleball community is through a coach, through doing leagues, bringing other friends as well.
I love that you touched on that. Part of the vitality medicine, lifestyle medicine, the thing that I practice, so much of the ability for a person to thrive is that sense of joy, that sense of
Mhm.
community, that sense of connection. And you described how you found it during the pandemic when everything was closed except the pickleball courts, and how you then didn't become isolated. And yet, so many people remain isolated even 5 years later. So
Mhm.
I do see that as well, that people who play pickleball are just a beautiful community, and you may not have anything else in common with somebody, but you can get on the court and you can play and just have a great time. So thank you so much for mentioning
Oh,
community.
you're welcome. And as much as I think pickleball is a sport, our tennis friends may disagree. But even though it's a sport, it's something that you can go in at a beginner level. And with just a little bit of time and dedication, you can really a pretty skilled athlete on a pretty short term basis. But I will tell you, the thing that I love about pickleball is really the community. It is a sport, it is cloaked as a sport, but it is very much a social connection. So, short little story, when I did move out here after I was pickleball and I became a pretty decent at it, I've always had a love of teaching. So, when my children were younger, I was the mom that was the soccer coach. I was the one that training and doing things and really wanted to inspire people to be their best. So I joined a Facebook group, and it was all a bunch of women, and they would host different events. And I was thinking, my gosh, I don't know, what could I host? And I'm like, oh, I'll just teach a group of people pickleball. And it was women, right? And so I had an event at the Boulders, and it was like mimosas and pickleball, which you probably shouldn't drink mimosas in retrospect before playing pickleball, but it was just a way to bring a bunch of women together. And there was about 40 of them that showed up to this event. And so it
Wow.
was a big deal. And this was before I got my PPR certification. And after this event, Dr. Tammy, it was unbelievable. I was getting messages from women that were like, hey, I just moved here. I joined this women's group because I too was lonely. And I will tell you, when I got hooked from teaching was when I received an email from a lady. She'll remain anonymous, but she said, I just want you to know that my husband left me 2 years ago, left me raising 3 children by myself. I have been so depressed. And this came across my social media to sign up for. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to force myself to do this. And she said, I'm so thankful that I did, because this was the most amount of fun that I have had in 2 years. And I ended up taking this group, and so many things I did right accidentally. But I took this group and I said, all right, we're all here. Everyone exchange numbers, because these people are going to be your new pickleball buddies. So when you want to go practice with another beginner at your level, you guys have 40 people that you can choose from. And this group to this day has still stayed together. And everyone in this group are like besties, especially pickleball besties. And I have just seen people come out with depression from playing pickleball. I mean, if you think about all of kind of common to get yourself out of depression, right? It's sunlight, it's physical movement, it is community, it is socializing, it's the ability to have fun. I've seen people lose 80 pounds playing pickleball in 6 months. It is a mental, uplifting, where you can think faster, that the cognitive side of being able to keep score in pickleball. Your brain is a muscle. And so it just hits on every single health factor. I'm pretty sure pickleball could save the world.
I love that. I love that you've been able to bring this around and bring it to so many people. That 40 is obviously exponentially grown because that's
Mhm.
how things work on that curve.
Mhm.
And what a beautiful story. Wow. Big deal. Thank you on
It
behalf of
is. It
all
is.
of us who you
Yeah.
teach.
Thank you. Well, again, I do it because I love it, and being able to see it change people's lives, that's the reward right there.
It is. One thing you mentioned is that when you started learning, you were doing it one day a week and it morphed into 6 days a week. How did you avoid injuries knowing that you were already an athlete? You already know about things like warm up and cool down and dynamic stretching versus static stretching, but how did you avoid injuries at that time? And then how do you translate that into your beginners and those as they advance through to prevent the injuries?
Right, yeah. Well, so I'll say I made a lot of mistakes up from just a fan myself. And so some of the things that I did, I'm able to incorporate, teach my beginners. And so there's a lot of repetitive injuries with pickleball players. So kind of talk about that. I suffered from tennis elbow because I was playing so much. And so tennis elbow just affects you right in that elbow joint. And a lot of times it's for overuse or hitting the ball swing patterns. And so there's some things that you can do right out of the gate to adjust for that a beginner wouldn't necessarily know unless it tells them. So a lot of that, changing the weight of your paddle, and more appropriately, you're probably death gripping your pickleball paddle. And you don't want a tighter grip than maybe like a 4 out of 10. So I can tell as soon as people are, oh, my elbow's hurting, I'm like, what's your paddle grip? You should be able to hold a little baby bird in your hand about the level of grip. So that's something that beginners right out of the gate, they experience a lot of tennis elbow. Also knees. There is a lot of, excuse me, lateral movement involved in pickleball, especially up at what we call the kitchen line or the non-volley zone line. And your knees aren't used to that when you first start playing. Proper footwear is an absolute must right out of the gate. I played with running shoes for like probably the first 3 months. And one of my friends stopped and looked, and I was like sliding. I mean, it was like all over I felt like an ice rink to me. And she goes, you know, you're going to end up spraining with proper footwear. More importantly, a court shoe versus like a tennis running shoe. A court shoe is very sturdy. There's a lot of lateral supports that go over it. And when you take your shoe off, it's not going to fold up like a taco, like a comfortable running shoe does. It absorbs shock differently, and it is going to take the pain out of your knees immediately. So proper footwear right out of the gate. And I tell my beginners this on my 101 class that we start off equipment and safety. Next out of the gate, eyewear. You have to wear proper eyewear, and you can't get lazy when you play inside because we don't have the Arizona beaming down in your face. Probably the first 2 years that I was playing, played with a friend, and he took a pickleball to the eye. And it's not a matter of if you get hit with a pickleball while playing, it's a matter of when. It is going to happen. Yep. So be prepared. And he ended up, it detached his retina, and he went in for surgery. It failed, it detached. He did it 3 different times, and now he's just blind in that eye. And it could have been easily avoided with proper eyewear. And by the way, you can hop on Amazon and get cheap eyewear for like $19.99, great sports glasses. But don't be lazy when you go inside, wear clear ones. And then I would probably say the next biggest injury that I've seen, I've been on the court where people have snapped their Achilles. Yep. And that is by them warming up with the dynamic warm up in the beginning, because it snaps, and typically that is done not being warm or quick motion. And then I would say the next one is people going back for lobs incorrectly. And they go back and they do the cha-cha-cha versus turning around and running to the back of the court. And I've seen a lot of people fall back, wrist injuries. My aunt was one. I was not on the court when she did this, but she went back and she tried to brace herself, and she had a compound fracture with her bone coming out of her wrist, and a lot of people hitting their head when they go back as well. And I will tell you that all of those could be prevented with eyewear, good shoes, and the understanding, the fundamental understanding, hopefully a good coach will bring to the table and teach you how to correctly go about some of these shots that are higher risk shots to take.
Wow, these are fantastic. I'm so sorry that you have the stories that you have regarding the open bone fracture of the wrist, which is the number one, and it happens more often in women than in men. We can talk about as part of the whole osteopenia, osteoporosis, and women losing muscle as they get to that age of menopause. But the loss of sight, that's so devastating, and
it is.
Does not
but
need
if
to
we can learn from those and we change, why aren't we doing it?
Right. Well, it's so simple, and it should almost be one of these things. Stepping on the court, check the shoes, check. Stepping on the court, got the goggles, check. I mean, the whole
Mhm,
thing. And that before I step on the court, I've done a proper warm up. I don't
mhm.
want you to go through motions of what is warm up, and I've got a
Yeah.
video specifically on those things, but kind of tell us, what does it mean? You don't just unpack your bag, make sure that you put your sunscreen on and get ready, and then just run out onto the court. Or
Mhm.
your warm up is a dinking around and just then dive right into 3 games. What should a real warm up be?
Warm up look like? Yeah. So I like what is called a dynamic warm up. And so a lot of people don't understand the difference between a dynamic warm up and static stretching. So let me use a little bit of an analogy here. Think of your muscles as spaghetti. Before you bend spaghetti, if you put it in a boiling pan of hot water, the heat on that spaghetti makes it where it is malleable and it can bend, right? That's like a dynamic warm up. So you're adding heat, you're adding heart rate, you're adding blood pumping through your body, versus a static stretch is doing something where you're opposed to do a long stretch. Doing a static stretch before playing pickleball can actually be more harmful. It's like taking that dry spaghetti noodle without the heat and trying to bend it. And what does sometimes happens, right? It pops. And so the static stretching is much better to do at the end of your pickleball session, as you know, kind of as a cooling down. It's not anything crazy, but think of trying to do things that also get your heart rate up. And so big arm circles, right, in both directions, loosening up your rotator cuff and your labrum, which is a high injury impact zone as well. Doing what I call monster up and down the court, where you're stretching your hamstrings. It's doing hip flexors as you're walking and rotating your hips, doing some wrist movements, some lunges back and forth. And so you're just trying to get that heart rate elevated. And then you can go into doing some dinking or some fast volleys at the net, because you also have to warm up your eyes too. It takes a while to get your brain in action as well. But that dynamic warm up should be maybe about 5 minutes before you go playing pickleball. And you don't want to go into it cold. That's probably one of the worst things that you can do to your body, potentially even your partner. So just spend that 5 minutes of getting the blood pumping and flowing.
I love those suggestions, and it's great analogy. The pasta noodle stiff,
Yeah.
and that's going to be your tendon. That's going to be your Achilles tendon rupturing, or it's going to be the rotator cuff tendon as you go into those monster slams. So
Mhm.
perfect. Love it. Love it.
You know, when people do pop their Achilles, and that's the first thing that they, oh, I didn't warm up, and they'll be standing there and they'll turn around and they'll think that they just got hit by something in the back of a calf. And they won't understand that it was that fast movement or that jerk movement that popped it. And it was just like that dry spaghetti noodle and pop. And that's not a fun injury to recover from.
No, typically that's surgical. Some of these other things we can do with the regenerative medicine kind of things and the rest and the whole bracing, etc. But yeah, the Achilles are full rupture because it's going to retract is typically a surgical repair. So if we can prevent it, like you've talked about with eyewear, footwear, and now a dynamic warm up, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, say you have been playing pickleball and you have had some coaching along the way in the very beginning, and now you want to up your game.
Mm.
You are ready to take it to the next level. What kind of things do you do as a coach when the person is trying to advance the duration, maybe the intensity, and increase their performance, and the importance of coaching for that part rather than just do it on your own?
Yeah, yeah. So a little bit of kind of a tiered approach on that. So one, you got to practice. And in practicing, it doesn't necessarily mean actually playing a game. So it's drills. You win this game by doing drills. Find yourself a partner that wants to also elevate, someone that you find a good compatibility with, in where you can have a really nice dynamic duo with a partner. But even if you don't have a partner, don't let that stop you, because there's tons of things that you can even do on your own to practice. When it comes to increasing the amount that you play, listen to your body. You know, when I first started, you're using a lot of muscles in your core that you may not normally be using in your booty or your thighs. And so I remember playing, and the next day my legs would be like so sore. And now I can play all day and I don't really get sore anymore. But that's another beautiful thing about the game is an average pickleball game lasts for about 15 minutes. and play a game. Don't overdo it. And then you be back up, paddle up, and go into a second game. I would probably say the average person, when they go to a pickleball, will play anywhere from maybe 4 to 6 games before they tire out. But for the athlete that is interested in growing their game, it's going to be all about drills. One thing that you can do to play in a little bit more competitive environment is to join a league. There are different types of leagues that you can play this game of pickleball with: singles, doubles, what's called mixed, and maybe your partner a male, and then you would play another woman male mix, or maybe you want to play with all women. You can do that as well. There's different types of games that are rolling on the market where we haven't talked about this, but there's something called a duper rating. And a duper rating is basically the skill level that you play the pickleball at. And once you start playing a lot, you'll start wanting to play with people that are similar level or even higher. So a lot of times when you're playing against a higher player, really tune in to what they're doing. I think one of the mistakes that a lot of pickleball players make is everyone wants to play against better players because they know that it's going to be a better, more intensive game, but then they'll turn around and they'll avoid hitting the ball to the better player because they're more focused on wanting to win the game. And so they'll try to play like keep away. And I'll be like, what are you doing? This is your opportunity to see what type of shot is this higher level player going to make than you. So there's a lot to be learned from that. And then when you play lower players, work on the shots that are hard for you. That's your opportunity to practice some of the shots that you may be a little nervous to make a higher level player. Work on that third shot. Try to get the ball where you are targeting strategically, wanting to let it land. And so think of your game. You should be spending about 30% of your time playing players that are lower than you, about 30% of your time playing similar level players, and then try to hop in on 30% of players that are better than you.
That's wonderful. You can learn from everybody. You can learn from anybody within that skill range because you can see yourself as any of those too. You can see yourself as a beginner and know that they're maybe doing something that is better than you have mastered, and they're doing something with more fundamentals. And obviously the higher level skill set person too. So I completely agree. That's fantastic. And you've got somebody like you who is coaching somebody through a league because you have your own leagues, and you can say, this is why I've put you with this person. This is what I want you to do. This is why we're drilling it this way, because there's a reason behind it. Not just that I want you to get annihilated out on the court. I want you to learn here and learn from that. So I think this is fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, well, good. Well, a lot of times people will instantly get kind of disenfranchised if they have a player that they're playing with that is a lower level player, because what happens, people target like the weaker player, but you have to learn how to overcome that. And once a score changes in the game, if we typically go to 11 and we win by 2, if I'm playing with someone and the opposing team gets like 4 or 5 points ahead of us, I want to stop and think, we got to change this up. Right. And I want to encourage my partner. I do not want to be the type of partner that is huffing or puffing or rolling my eyes, making my partner feel bad, because some of this can very much be a mind game. And so I want to motivate, right? I want to say, that's okay, we'll get the next one. Or, you're there, you got it. I want to keep them motivated. Even if we lose a point, I want to keep the morale up and I want to tap paddles, and that's okay, we got this. But it's also about having fun, right? And so my overall mindset to not be that we're not going to have fun. Even if we lose, you're still having a good day on a pickleball court. And so I think I digress a little bit. I forgot where I was going. But with that partner, after that 4 or 5 point spread happens, I'll call a little timeout and I'll say, hey, let's change up some things a little bit. So I can tell you're being targeted. I want to relieve some of the pressure. I might come over and maybe 2 or 3 feet of your court so you don't feel so pressured. And then I may say, hey, when they're hitting the ball to you, instead of hitting it back to the person directly in front of you, it's hard for me to get in that game and relieve you. So now let's not worry about if we win the point, but if you get hit the ball, I want you to hit it cross court now. So now I can come in and maybe poach and get in the game a little bit. So you got to change what you're doing and your approach to it to say, let's change something up. And by the way, that timeout could be something as very easily as saying, you know what, we're not hitting it where we want to. Now let's not worry about who we're hitting it to. Let's try to hit the middle line on everything. And forget about so much winning the game, but see how you can adjust under pressure and
Great tips.
encourage your partner.
Yeah, it's about the mindset. It's about the sportsmanship and when
Mm-hmm.
it all comes down to it. And you're right. I mean, we could be in a totally different place in a totally different time. And isn't it fantastic to be on that court? I love your mindset, coach. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Hey, I've been on the side where I've had a partner and I could hear them huffing and puffing if I wasn't doing good. And that only made my game about 10 times worse.
Right.
And I got to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm sure this is a lovely person. I felt bad for letting them down. And I don't want for anyone to think the friendship takes a backseat to winning. You know, it is about fun first and learning. And so sometimes people can become overly obsessed with the win.
Yeah. No, this is so important. And this is again something that comes out of the coach. Or think back to your high school days, whatever sport you used to play. And it wasn't just the person who went and gave you drills. They also had this mind talk with you. They
Yeah.
also had these strategy sessions. I love this. So what if a person is coming back from an injury? And I know it's going to be different if you say that I ruptured my Achilles versus I sprained my medial knee, the inside knee, completely different than if I have a partial torn rotator cuff and it's non-surgical and I just did something for it. But how do you, as the coach, then come back in and say, this is how we're going to bring you back in? Because they may have done PT, they may have a personal trainer, but it's not the same as sport specific rehab. What kind of specialty do you have as a PPR coach that then tells a person, this is your injury, this is how we're going to get you back in, and based on the timeline? Is it that's for the next session of your league, or is it they're actually a player and this is the season?
Right. So you're asking that question at a really interesting time in my life. So I know you know this, but your listeners don't. So I am actually sitting here with a broken leg where I have shattered my tibia plateau into 21 pieces. And I did not do it doing pickleball. I actually had just a freak snow skiing accident where my binding malfunctioned and my ski came off as I was on a green of all things. And I was just going straight. I didn't hit anything, but it was just enough to throw me off balance. I went flying in the air and I looked down at my leg, and from my knee down to my foot was jetting off to the right. And so one of the first things I thought about was, oh my, how life-changing is this going to be, not knowing how significant the injury actually ended up being. And so this is going to be an interesting process for me personally. The doctors fully believe that I'll be back, but it's going to take some time and PT. And it's kind of interesting being on this side of it as a coach as well, because I firsthand experience what a lot of my students have been through. And so as a coach, it's important for me to know what injuries people have. So that's one of the questions. If I'm doing like a group, let me know if you have an injury, because we can pivot. I have a pivot for just about every injury that the body can endure. And safety is always going to be number one precaution. And then it really just kind of depends on what that injury is, right? So part of that good communication with a partner, let's take lobs, for example. Lobs can be a little tricky to run down properly. And if I'm playing with someone new for the first time, if I see that they have a knee brace on, I want to ask, oh, how's your knee? And then I ask them, how do you feel about lobs? Let's set up the expectation. A lot of people, especially that's a little bit older, they're like, I don't do lobs. So if I'm getting a lobbed, we're going to focus on the next point because I'm not even going to run down and chase it. And I love that communication because I'm a little feisty on the court and I'm fast on a court. And so I'll get you lob, but now I have an understanding. So when we play, I'll tell them I'm going to chase down any lob. And you may hear me as I'm chasing it down audibly say, switch. If you hear that, I just want you to go to my side of the court and we're going to pick up right where we left off. So sometimes people are in recovery. I'm probably going to be that person because it's going to take me a while to get my speed back after my injury. So I'm going to be having that conversation on the flip side once I'm able to return to the court. So that's one example. Sometimes people don't have speed. That's just not one of their things. So I know you know this, but for your listeners that aren't pickleball players, there are a couple strategy positions that occur within the first couple hits of a pickleball rally. One being, if you are the one receiving the serve after you return the ball, you are supposed to run up to what's called the kitchen line. And it's about 7 feet back from the net, what we call the kitchen line. And if you don't run up there, strategically speaking, you are leaving up 80% of your court that's unmanned. And so for someone that with some mobility issues or they're not as fast, one of the easiest ways to adjust that is when you're the one returning the ball, don't do a drive, which is a ball that's being hit fast. Do a nice archy return, somewhat of a lob, and that gives you plenty of time to walk up to the line, in my case, limp up to the line. And so making those adjustments, an ordinary player is probably not going to know that unless they've been coached or they're told, hey, instead of this, you can do this. Some people that are returning from a labrum or a rotator cuff injury, which by the way, about 9 years ago, I had labrum surgery. So, and 15 years ago, I actually tore my ACL kickball. And so the right side of my body basically hates me. So I've had to adjust all of these. Doing a slam, it may be better to let the ball bounce so you don't have to overextend an injury, work on your soft game. So there's all these little tweaks that you can do based off of what that ailment is.
And that you've communicated it not only to your partner, but also to your coach so that you can not just expect yourself to go out there, just make your rotator cuff injury worse by being the slammer that you used to be. So I love that too. The communication is crucial, and that's what makes you a better player and a better pickleball ambassador, really, because people want to be with you on the court.
Yeah, well, we're all going to some type of injury. And I think that the key, do what's best for your body, listen to your body, and take it in small steps. Because there's a lot of things that you do. I actually, so as I'm thinking about, I twisted my ankle one time playing pickleball. And I actually had the proper court shoes on too. So not to say that this is going to be foolproof, because there's still sometimes I jumped up for a ball for an overhead slam and I came down, and I wasn't doing anything too crazy, but I came down just enough where my ankle turned. And so I twisted it. And I knew it wasn't a terrible injury, but I listened to my body. And even with that injury, for about 4 weeks, I took it really, really gentle. I couldn't chase down any lobs. I couldn't do anything, but it forced me to work on the placement of my game, where I'm like, I'm going to get it. You know, there's more time than what you think that you have, because we are playing kind of a modified wiffle ball, but it forced me to slow my game down. And it ended up a brilliant learning experience for my pickleball game.
And it was a brilliant learning experience because of your mindset. We keep coming back to that. You took it and said, okay, there's an injury here. And rather than just sit on the couch and eat bonbons for the next 4 weeks, you said, now's the time for me to really focus on a part of my game that maybe I wasn't as good at. And so I love that too, that you're offering these kind of things. And I'm sure a lot of that is your coaching mentality. And I'm sure a lot of it is just baseline Coach Kelly, that's who you are as a person too. But that's fantastic advice.
Yeah, good. Well, hopefully people can learn from, the mistakes that we make. But it turned out very valuable. And matter of fact, I even developed some drills that I incorporated where I will make students almost stand in line and trying to teach them that they have more time than they think. I'll be on the other side of the net and I'll be like, all right, the first person in line is going to have one paddle. All 10 of you behind the first person, put your paddles down off the court. You have more time than you think, and I'll hit the ball to the person. They'll hit it back. And by the time I hit it back, that person has to run to the end of the line, pass their paddle to the person waiting. And it demonstrates, wow, we have so much more time than we think to return a ball. And it can be done so much more methodically than the panic of, oh, I just have to get the ball over the net. And I ended up picking that up when I was forced to slow myself down.
Yeah, I love that drill. I am an impatient person with that, and it really taught a lot of patience with it. So that was a really good one. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Coach, what have we not talked about? I know that you've got so much to share, and we might have to do version 2 of this if that's okay with you. But for
Yeah.
this version,
Yeah.
what kind of things do you want to summarize? What things do you say, hey, but before we go, I want to make sure we get this out. And first of all, for everybody, you're going to come back strong. You're going to come back and you're going to have this amazing recovery because you're doing it right. And you had a baseline level of health. The whole world needs to know that you already were strong and well muscled and eat so well and sleep and do all these perfect things. So first of all, we wish for your 100% recovery, but please tell us what you want to leave people with and how people find you to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would probably say from a beginner player, the biggest hurdle after they get like a couple lessons under their belt. For me personally, when I do my clinics, I like to offer kind of a little bit of a beginner package where there's about 4 different clinics that they can take. And what I'm doing on the first clinic, it's like the intro, right? We're going over what I call the wacky rules, because 4 really wacky rules to pickleball. It's learning how to serve right away because you're not going to get a rally going until you get your serves in. And it's getting comfortable with your paddle. And the part 2 class, we're working partner communication, where you're supposed to be, strategy. By part 3, it's how to hit a lob accurately, how to chase down a lob accurately, and then 4, kind of the blending of all of that together. But I like to have my students up and running after like their first lesson. I always end with live play so they can kind of get a feel for what the game's going to feel like. And I'll tell you, 90% of them get hooked. Not everyone loves the sport, but it is a strong 90%. People can't wait to get back on and get more instruction. But I would suggest a couple coaching segments. And then once you're comfortable on a court, you've got to go up to one of the public courts near you. There's public courts all over the area. And if your listeners listening in different states or different areas, pickleball is hot all the way across the country. You can do a Google search. If you're on Facebook, you can search pickleball plus your city name. Us pickleball players, we are obsessed with it. And so you just have to find your people. And I think it's really scary for a new person to go to a public court because we're worried about, oh, what if no one wants to play with me? Oh, what about this? What about that? Most of these courts will have even a beginner section on one side. Some may have an advanced section. Just hang out with your people and let people know when you come on, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've been up here. And everyone wants to take you under your wing with this pickleball community. I promise you, you will be fine. You just let people know that you're new. And a lot of times when I go out to a public pickleball court, the first thing I do, so there's something called a paddle up process. So these pickleball courts are super busy these days. And if you go during a busy time, there's a lot of people that are waiting on the side for a court to open up. And so oftentimes they have a little mechanism that attached to the fence where you put your paddle in this little placeholder. For the 70s and 80s babies, such as myself, think about it when you go to an arcade and you want to play Pac-Man and someone's on Pac-Man, you take your little quarter and you put it on the screen, right? That means you're on deck. So we have a pickleball system like that. And so when you're on deck, you're going to put your paddle in this little placeholder, and it's typically color coded. And there's going to be 4 slots. And when it's your turn, the first thing I do is introduce myself to the new people. I'll be like, hi guys, I'm Kelly. Nice to meet you guys. And a little bit of friendly talk as we're walking over to the courts. And if everyone is new, or if you haven't played with any of these people, which happens all the time, I try to get a little bit of a baseline. Okay, how do you guys want to group? I might ask for their like experience level. And if someone says, I'm still new, I say, well, hop in here with me and I'll take on someone that's new. And then that way it's not so unbalanced, because you don't want to go on a court with 4 people and the 2 best people pair up together against the 2 weaker players. That's not really fun for anybody, right? It's not fun to win a game 11-0 on a public court for me. That's not challenging. It's deflating. I don't want those people to experience it. So if I know that I'm playing with another good player, I say, we're going to split up. Let's each take a beginner. Then it becomes a competitive game. But you have to be willing to put yourself in that scenario. And so typically on like my coaching sessions, after my fourth coaching session, I say, I'm throwing you in the deep end. We're going to a public court. And I'll say, now, here's the good thing. I'm going to be your partner. So we'll take that lesson up to a public court. I'm going to teach how to paddle up. It kind of gets all of the nervous vibes off. And then I say, and here's the best part, we're just going to have fun. But you do that, and then you learn the people at these different parks. You'll start seeing familiar faces, and you'll get comfortable with it, because you can't grow in any sport unless you overcome some of that fear and you find your people and you play and you practice. But I'll tell you, here in Phoenix, these pickleball courts, I mean, they are popping, and they're typically super busy in the morning. So from, probably about 7 to 10, people are playing pickleball before they go to work. During the day, the courts are a little bit more empty. And then in the evenings, from about 6 to 10 p.m., same thing. They're back to being busy. And the other thing that I would say is join a league. There's different types of leagues. Like the leagues I run, I have different levels. So if you're a beginner, no problem. I'm going to pair you with other beginners. If you're an intermediate player, I'm pairing you with intermediate players. But it forces you to do regular weekly games, and it forces you to meet new people and grow just your pickleball world. So that would be my advice for someone that wants to get involved. Get a couple lessons in under your belt where you're comfortable with the rules, the basics, and find your local pickleball park, practice, do drills, and then join a league, and then enter into a tournament, because they have tournaments for beginners as well. And so it's a great way to really push the boundaries of your own personal circle. Okay, so remember how I told you in the beginning that I was invited to play pickleball from this lady that I met on Facebook? So her name was Robin, and we were playing for about 6 months. She's like, oh, well, we need to join a tournament or do a tournament together. And I'm like, oh, we're not that good, right? Like, that's a little nerve-wracking to join a tournament. And because of her age, these tournaments are also bracketed based off of age level, because they try to keep it within your skill level, which is great. So at the time, I was 44, because there was an age bracket from 19 to 45 was the first age bracket. And then it went from like 45 to 55 and then plus. Well, she was, okay, so she'd probably kill me if I told her age, but she was quite a bit older than me. And
55 plus. We'll just
55
say
plus, yeah. So I couldn't play up in her bracket, right? Because they would see that as me potentially being what we call a sandbagger, because I was younger, right? So I couldn't move up to her bracket, but she could come down to my bracket because she was older, right? So we joined this tournament. Unbeknownst to us, because we were new players, we had no idea that it was this massive sanctioned tournament. So we go in, and our player bracket was just stacked. So it was the biggest bracket of players at this tournament. And so there's like announcers there, and there's like people that are watching, like spectators. And next thing you know, my heart is just beating out of my chest. I want to puke. I literally want to puke. And it was a hot Arizona day. It was like 105 degrees. I'm so nervous. And of course, you're like watching come in, and these two girls come in, and they're in these cute little sports bras and little booty shorts. And they looked like they just got out of a Muscle Fitness cover shoot. And they had this huge fan club. And I am like, please tell me we are not playing them in our first tournament, please. Sure enough, that's who we played in the first game. And I thought I was going to puke. They clobbered us, by the way. The nerves kicked in, and they absolutely clobbered us. And so this particular tournament, they had what they called a loser's bracket. So if you lost one of your first tier games, you get bumped down to the loser's bracket. Didn't mean you were done, but if you lost after this, then you're done. And so again, our bracket was stacked. And so after this, we start winning, and we go through and we won every single game. And here we are again. And now we are in the medal matches, right? And so we come in and we have to play these girls again for the gold medal match.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. We still lost. However, we didn't lose near as bad. And our first tournament, we ended up going home with a silver medal. And I will tell you, it was electrifying. And even though I thought I was going to pass out and puke multiple times, I literally called a timeout at one point in time because I'm like, first off, I'm going to overheat because it's so hot. I'm also so nervous. I want to puke. And I called a timeout, and they had a big water station off the court. I went and I put my head under it, and I just let the water run all through my head. I shaked it off, and I'm like, all right, let's go. So, but that's listening to your body and trying to adapt, because the last thing I wanted to do was pass out. But to be in my 40s, and I'm 48 now, and being able to compete at a sport at this age is really freaking cool.
It's very cool. It's
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah. And I love that you got bit by the pickleball bug too.
True. And older than you when I started, that's for sure. So it's definitely fantastic. And you've been all things. You are my coach, and I appreciate everything that you've taught me. And we didn't even hit the pickleball court until we started with a lesson with you. So that's how I wanted to do it. And I think it was right for us anyway. So
Yeah.
thank you for
And
that.
because of that, Tammy, each time that we got together, your growth process was highly accelerated because you did the hard work up front, and you're not a typical student either. So you got it. And then you also got a little bit of a killer instinct in you as well. And I know you like being the best at what you do, and that shows.
Yeah, the best with the rotator cuff injury right now myself, but that's okay. But Kelly, I know I found you, but how do people find you if they want to work with you? And yeah, share it. I will share you with them.
So my company name is Teach Me To Pickle. And so you can find me on all social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and my website, which is just teachmetopickle.com. On Instagram, Teach Me To Pickle, Facebook, Teach Me To Pickle. And then also on my personal sites, I also still post when I have a league or something on my own personal sites, and that's Kelly Shumway, SHUMWAY. And then I typically teach in like the North Scottsdale area. For those that are wanting to learn this game, put a big toe in the pickleball world, I do also have a Facebook group that was another one of those things that just accidentally took off. It's called Scottsdale Pickleball and Pals. And it is a forum where people can join, and they post that they're new, they're looking for other new players to meet me up at Thompson Peak 7 o'clock tonight. So it's a way that you can meet other people in this area. So that's been fun. And then, like I said, I also post leagues and clinics there as well. And then at the end of last year, we did our first pickleball trip, and I took a group of about 25 students down to Puerto Vallarta, which was an amazing time. We did about 3 hours of drills, coaching, and then we opened it up for open play. And by the time it was evening, we were off drinking some margaritas, playing on the beach, and doing all kinds of fun things. I actually was teed up to take another big group to Greece in June. Unfortunately, due to my injury, I had to hit pause on that. But those pickleball vacations are an amazing way to connect and meet new friends. And some of these people are quickly becoming lifelong friends as the years keep on ticking by. So just get involved. You'll find your people.
You will. And we'll put everything that Kelly just talked about down in the show notes if you're driving or you didn't have a pen to write all these things down. But Kelly, I want to thank you so much. You are a fantastic coach, an amazing woman, and we are so lucky to have you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for having me. This was super fun to share my little passion with you and your followers as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. We'll have to do a part 2 soon.
All right. Love it. Take care, Tammy.
Thank you. If you have knee pain and would like to learn more, I have a worksheet called 5 Things to Do Now to Reduce Your Knee Pain Within a Week. Go to www.kneeboostnow.com to download it for free. I'd love to hear from you, so please like, subscribe, and comment below so I can help you get out of your knee pain.